Hi, my name is Nathan Houx. I'm with the City of Modesto, and I wanted to welcome you to the Challenges and Successes of Developing Urban Trails session for the 2021 Trails and Greenways Conference. In this session, we're going to talk a little bit about developing an urban trail and the challenges that presents, but also the great opportunities that presents to encourage recreational use in an urban environment. The Virginia Corridor Trail is about a 4.2-mile trail, and we're going to highlight how we were able to overcome the challenges and create a very successful urban trail in Modesto. We're going to talk a little bit about funding, design, volunteer efforts, construction, and operation. And so we hope that you'll enjoy the session. We have today with us Kelly Gallagher also. He works for the City of Modesto, and he's our park operations manager. He's waving there. And Brian Fletcher from Callander Associates Landscape Architecture.
How you doing, everyone?
Yeah, he helped us design a good portion of the Virginia Corridor, almost all the sections we'll be talking about. So we're very excited to get started, and I'm going to turn it over to Brian to kind of get started there.
Nathan, I really appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, it's certainly a pleasure to be in front of all you today to talk about a project that is near and dear to my heart, Virginia Corridor. Just to give you a little bit of background, it is a conversion of former Tidewater Southern Railway spur. I'll go over the history a little bit about that, but it did go through what's called the rail banking procedures, which allows a transfer of use that involves a long-term easement to theoretically preserve the right-of-way for future transportation uses. Virginia Corridor is part of Modesto's larger non-motorized transportation system. It comprises about 4 miles of Class 1 bikeway. It also incorporates a lot of features of a linear park and providing additional amenities for the community. Just a little bit of the history of Tidewater Southern. The corridor originally was developed in the early 1900s as an electrified passenger route between Stockton and Modesto. As kind of passenger use kind of declined and freight use expanded, that's how it kind of transitioned more towards freight and eliminated the pedestrian or the passenger uses. But over time, with cheaper trucking and the interstates and highway system, it kind of became obsolete, and transportation of goods kind of went elsewhere, other methods, and the corridor became abandoned. Just to go through some of the photographs, here's some historical photos. This is the last train that ran through Modesto. We took a look at old photographs of the railroad corridor for inspiration for the design, and came across this logo that was found on many of the boxcars. So you'll see that kind of become the logo or identification for Virginia Corridor in the later slides. Here's some existing photographs before the trail was developed. You can see, like many off-street off-street corridors like this, the corridor butts up against residential fences, sometimes immediately adjacent to, or in Virginia Corridor, there was an adjacent right-of-way that was often used for services like trash pickup, as well as access into into residential backyards for RV parking and such. It's entirely off corridor, or off street, with the exception of numerous crossings along the way, and you can see it in the picture on the left, where those happened. And before we got on board, the railroad company came in and removed the tracks. However, as part of our project, we had to remove the tracks within the street right-of-ways. So that was interesting. And finally, just as designers looking for inspiration within the site, and what we did find were these old Art Deco bridge railings close to downtown that we use as inspiration for markers, and you'll see later on in the bridge design. So Virginia Corridor was identified early on in a '96 plan that the city had developed for non-motorized transportation within the city. And that is why they went forward with the rail banking procedures. We got on board in 1999 and went through a series of community and stakeholder workshops to identify issues and concerns and to develop the designs that would eventually become the trail. And what we found, in general, there was overwhelming support for the project. However, we did run into the traditional concerns about security, the trail having, being right next to residential backyards. So we're going to go through the design and how we address that. Our work at that time culminated in what's called the specific plan, created a vision for the trail. And what that has been used now is to implement 6 phases of construction have been completed. And the 7th phase is currently in development right now. To give you a quick snapshot of the trail, of the 4 miles of trail, you can see the dark line down the middle. Those are the segments that have been constructed. You can see the dashed line, that's where phase 7 is, and it's eventually going to continue on to Bangs and Pellendale. The different colors represent all the amazing connections that this trail provides for the community, from other trails within the cities to parks, education centers, retail and commercial, and all the residences along the way. So it really has become a well-used trail, and providing these kind of non-motorized, don't have to get in your car type of links for the residents. Maybe Nate, do you want to talk a little bit more about the benefits that the city sees?
Sure, Brian, definitely. So, there's quite a few benefits of a trail like this to a community. It really does, and now that we have 6 phases complete, we can really see that it does provide a community identity. That there's so many people that love this trail, that whether they live right next door to it or, miles away, they come, they use it on a daily or, weekly basis, depending on their abilities. But it creates just a place to kind of go and socialize and exercise and all those opportunities. The next item there, recreational opportunities. Clearly, that's one of the great benefits of a trail in an urban area. People can get out and get some exercise. They can, go run with a friend or ride their bike, or like the guy on the left here, take his kid for a stroll. And then increasing habitats. So, you can see the wildlife and all that. We have quite a bit of, look at the pictures that Brian had before shown us with basically a bunch of rock and rails. And you look at this picture, and you can see that there's so much more habitat, wildlife, just a much more inviting experience for all, including bugs, wildlife and all that kind of stuff. So there's definitely educational opportunities too that we've found. We get questions all the time, like, what kind of tree was that at the Virginia Corridor here, or what kind of wildflowers are those? So that's always something that people have questions. They maybe want to use it in their yard or whatever. The trail does link people for sure. A lot of people will meet here to go for a run or a bike ride or whatever.
Hey, Ben, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to note one heavy use for the corridor is the dog walkers. Every morning, every afternoon, evening, you see dog walkers and it seems to be a popular way to enjoy the corridor.
Definitely. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks for jumping in. So the other thing here, it increases property values. I mean, that is a plus of living next to a park or a trail. You know, at first there were people that were concerned about security and, you know, what it's going to do to their property values. That has been proven to be a plus. So property values have gone up adjacent to the corridor. Security is actually higher where the trail is being used. We do have, you know, phase 7 and further out, we'll probably have at least a couple more phases. Those areas we have lots of challenges with security, where we have, you know, people that are homeless camps or just things that go on there, dumping trash and things like that, which you don't have where the trails are built now, and just so many people walking there. So that issue has been addressed, and people now see the value of this trail. And there's many more benefits, which we probably don't have time to go through here, but one of the big ideas is, you know, at first you're going to have some people that don't understand that this is going to be a plus. They just see it as a change. And so you got to get past that and really show them that it is a plus. And we'll kind of show you that as we get to the different phases of the project too. So.
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting to watch and monitor realtor listings for properties, houses in close proximity of the trail, where they're actually listing the trail as a key feature of the property that they're selling as a sales point. So I think it's really, it proves the point that it increases property values and becomes an attraction for prospective buyers. It's amazing to think that, you know, I started on this project 22 years ago. That's me taking notes at one of the many stakeholders meetings. This is before kids and before a whole lot more gray hair. But it was really important for the outreach process to speak to the various stakeholder groups, whether that's Modesto Irrigation District and other kind of utility providers, various city departments, community groups and advocates that could really help get the word out about the process. We did have a number of community meetings and set them up on various spots along the corridor so that people can view the plans that we had prepared, and that they could see specifically where their house was and where, or actually what was being proposed immediately adjacent to their specific home. You know, and throughout the process, it was really important also to reach out to potential funding sources, including Senator Boxer made a visit out to the site, and we walked it with her group to show the benefits of non-motorized transportation system and the importance of funding to realize that. So like I said, all that community outreach culminated into a master plan, which facilitated the 6 phases and now 7 phases moving forward. What's been interesting to see in looking back on these images is what really got built and what didn't. And it's nice to see that a majority of what was proposed on the plans themselves actually got constructed. Now, we are showing one that didn't, which is a restroom and a little bit of an extension of a play area, but you'll see how we facilitated that in the construction coming up. We also did inspiration or tried to create some imagery to get people excited about the look and the feel, and how are we going to bring forth concepts of railroad and Art Deco features that we found on the site and the history of that. So again, we bring these up to show you how we went from concept and vision into reality, and it's been exciting to see how many of the concepts actually did get built.
Let me jump in here for just a second too, Brian. And if you look at the bridge, we'll show you a picture in a minute of this bridge in real life, and it looks very, very similar to what was designed here. The little Art Deco fence posts, piers on the left there, and that smaller picture, those look very, very similar. The kiosk looks very similar. But then if you look to the right, you know, we had an idea where we were going to put a train along the corridor just to kind of educate people about the history of the area and all that. We did actually look into doing that and actually purchased a caboose to potentially put there. But as time went on, you know, this was, you know, 2000, approximately 2000 or so, I'm guessing, when we did that. And, you know, we decided about a year ago that, you know, that's probably not a good idea anymore. The world has changed a little bit. You know, homelessness and different issues and vandalism are a big issue now. And so maybe that idea doesn't work anymore. And so one of the points here to make is that, you know, you got to be flexible as you planned, you know, 20 years ago, but things change. So anyway, that's just kind of what I want to add in there, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to jump into, we'll
Sure.
start now talking about the various phases of construction throughout. So why don't you take it, Nathan?
No problem. So I'm going to just kind of give a quick intro. Phase one. So we started off our project with really kind of an interesting intersection and track removal project, which actually had some utility improvements along the way too. So, you know, I think we put in some water lines through most of this area that kind of fed houses adjacent and things like that. It's part of our city's water system. And then we put in these crosswalks at various points along the early stages of the trail. And so that was kind of our first project, was just a streets project mainly to address what's going on in the streets. It's what we had funding for, I believe, at the time, most likely through some grant funding or local transportation funds. And so that's what we were able to do to kind of, you know, get people to be able to cross the streets safely. And so that was kind of phase one. And I'll let Brian talk a little bit maybe about the design if he wants to. But
yeah, I mean, even it's just important to start somewhere, to actually put improvements in the ground to help the community visualize the beneficial impacts of a trail in the area. So even as little as, you know, enhancing some crosswalks and doing some, you know, street patterns and pavements to increase the visibility of pedestrians in the area. You know, it was a small step, but it was important. Nathan, do you want to do the intro?
Sure, I will. All right. So yeah, anyway, this is phase two. This is what we call the Centennial Junction. And so this is kind of an area where we worked with Rotary Club. So our Rotary Club, our local Rotary Club, they were really excited about this project. They were having their 100-year celebration. And so they wanted to do something big. And so we had a section of trail that was right along a shopping center and one of our junior high schools. And so they wanted to like work on that area. It was between Roseburg Avenue and Orangeburg Avenue in our city, just a block long, but they wanted to spend some money there and develop this section. And so, you know, they fundraised for the majority of this project, and they actually hired contractors and found contractors to donate work, and kind of came out and volunteered to do different parts of the project, like I'm assuming planting and things like that. And so this first section was really a labor of love for our community to kind of say, you know, let's get this whole project kicked off and let's get it started. And it was really the catalyst. You know, once this little piece went in, everybody got super excited about like, how do we go to the next phase? How do we do more? So like this was kind of like the kickoff that got the ball rolling. And I'll let Brian talk a little bit more about the design of this area. And then,
hey guys, if you don't mind, I was going to jump in here and just talk a little bit about this being adjacent to Roseburg Square and the importance of it being next to a shopping center. is why we have the picnic tables and the kiosk. It's for people to gather and come from the shopping center to have sandwiches. And then my staff is the one that maintains that on a weekly basis. So you have the decorative concrete that gets pressure washed, and we work closely with Nathan's team to make sure that some of the amenities had some features that were helpful to us. Like, for example, the little stem wall with the skate stopper ridges, so that we can lessen the amount of vandalism that we have. But like Nathan said, this is an important hub of the corridor that really started everybody getting excited about the whole project. And so I think it's kind of snowballed from here. Brian, I'll let you take it from there.
Sure. Yeah, it was interesting because, most trails, as far as phasing goes, starts from one end and goes to the end, and it follows a very traditional phasing. This one, to the city's credit, really took advantage of an opportunity, a partnership with the Rotary clubs, and that resulted in the first phase actually being almost in the center of the trail. So it wasn't at either end; it was actually in the middle. And quite frankly, I think that helped, as Nathan said, kind of catapult the rest of the phases and funding of it, because people now could see what the trail could be, and wanted it in their neighborhood. The first phase was also really important, beyond proof of concept for the community, but it also created or established various standards for the trail. Whether it's, as Kelly said, if we're going to do seat walls, what are they going to look like, and how are we going to prevent skateboarders? Whether it's the entry walls and the details for the trail and paving and plant material and such. So it was very important to set the standards right from phase one. This is also a really good example of a pretty typical segment. You can see the shopping center off to the left, and Kelly talked about the connectivity that we worked in order to make sure that people can come in and out of that area. But you can see off to the right-hand side, this is that parallel right-of-way that's out there, and it's heavily used for trash pickup. This is where they come to pick that up, as well as residents with their RVs going into their backyard, and you can even see rose gardens and where people have extended their backyard slightly into this corridor. And those were some of the concerns that we heard during the community outreach. And as you can see, we worked very hard to keep those corridors open, to keep those functions going, and to not remove every aspect of what people felt comfortable with, or wanted to have their garden per se. There wasn't a reason we needed to remove that in order to get the trail in. This first phase also kind of kick-started another kind of program, which was fundraising. And Jim Niskanen, the Park and Rec director at the time, was very interested in kind of leveraging community and corporate sponsorships within to not only provide funding for the initial construction, but also providing for long-term maintenance. So, we developed a series of elements, from posters to booklets to other marketing materials to get the word out about what was available. And the city, and maybe Nathan can speak to this, did actually see some really good benefits to that.
Yeah, sure. And, definitely we did. The Rotary project was the first of many volunteer efforts. We're going to show you some pictures as we go along the way of various different projects. But on the left here, you see a sign where Royal Robins, they sponsored a section of the trail. And so we put a sign up recognizing that. And we had many other sponsors. The Garden Club put a rose garden along the trail. There's just various different sponsors. On the right-hand side here, you see the Lions Club that partnered with us on the next section we're going to talk about, to put in a playground and water play area. So those are kind of like, that's the exciting pieces of the puzzle, that when you get your community involved, things just kind of keep moving, and you're able to develop this trail fairly quickly. So yeah, why don't we go to phase 3? So phase 3 was the next section we built, and that actually took it from the Rotary Centennial Junction and headed south to our downtown, and finished off the trail heading south to basically College Avenue, which is adjacent to our junior college. And so one of the important things as we started to develop these phases, and as we're closer to downtown, we had a lot of amenities that we kept in the trail, and it was pretty well landscaped, and just a lot of detail. As we move on to the other phases, we'll kind of show you that we kind of value engineered some of those things out as we moved away from downtown. So that's something to kind of see in this picture. You can see a lot of that detailing that we have here. One of the important things also, as we started to get funding for phase 3, we started to look for grant funding. Grant funding is readily available typically for a project like this, that's a transportation project that addresses environmental issues. It can address stormwater. We'll show you that a little bit later. It also addresses, just kind of the getting people out of vehicles and getting them to ride their bike or walk to work or to the store or whatever. So, just that is one of the areas that really sells it to granting agencies. And so it's an important thing to kind of keep in mind as you're trying to find funding for these projects, that most of those grant funds are related to transportation, non-motorized transportation, biking, and all those kind of things. So that was phase 3, and I'll let Brian kind of talk a little about design, and if Kelly wants to jump in on some maintenance items, we'll let him do that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Remember these pretty flowers that are out there. They look beautiful, but Kelly will have some words of the reality of that, and mowing in and around California poppies. But as we move kind of closer to downtown, we started running into perceived obstacles. This is a Modesto irrigation district irrigation canal that was part of or within the area of study. So we worked very closely with MID to ensure that they had access to their facilities, and their concerns were addressed as far as keeping people away from the canal itself. But at the same time, they were very open in looking for things that we brought up. This was one of the areas that the trail was coming to this intersection, but we, because the sidewalk was really narrow, we couldn't keep we weren't able at the existing conditions to keep it completely off street. So we actually worked with MID, and we extended a culvert over the canal in order to widen that sidewalk so that bikes and pedestrians could stay off of the street in order to make that connection to the crosswalk. You can also see in the distance the play area, and this was also the one that was funded through the Lions Club. With any trail, we're looking for opportunities for stopping points, for destinations, for amenities, where people, especially with young families like this, where they can't go as far as others, there's a place to rest, there's a place to play, and in this case also, you can see in the background, there's a place to get wet as well and keep cool on a hot summer day. Kelly, I think you had some perspectives on this one.
Yeah, we have a beautiful splash pad in the background there. That's it's like a water tower feature. One of the challenges that we had as a maintenance division is just the amount of water that was coming out of the splash fountain was splashing out onto the turf area, making it too wet for people to sit on and enjoy. So we just installed some additional valves so that we could make the amount of water correct so that people could still enjoy it, but it wouldn't be splashing out onto the turf areas. So that was just one of the little nuances that we had to correct after the tower was installed. But during the summer, that's a pretty hot area to people to bring their kids and enjoy the outdoors and to get cooled down. And with the playground being adjacent to it, it's just a perfect spot for anyone to drive from their homes to this destination and enjoy the trail.
Yeah, you know, as designers, we're always looking for the intersections as opportunity sites. You know, we use big fancy terms like nodes, but these connection points, these intersections are really important opportunities for interaction, for community interaction, for sitting and contemplation, for, in many cases, an opportunity to stretch on a trail. So it was interesting to see how people throughout the years have been using these nodes. And then, you know, what's been interesting is to see how the city has kind of taken advantage of the exercise components and the entrance of community members, and have expanded on the idea of exercise and have installed various parkour equipment along the trail. Nathan, do you want to speak to the group that did that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, that was actually a recent project, and it goes through pretty much all the phases that we have constructed so far. Our local running club, the Shadow Chase Running Club, was excited about, like, hey, we want to put in some fitness stations along the Virginia corridor. You know, we run it all the time. You know, we think people might be interested in using some fitness stations. And so, you know, that's what they came to us. We worked with them through our Park Partners program, which is a program that groups can come and do some improvements in our parks. And so, you know, they fundraised, purchased, installed all of this, you know, under our supervision, and all these 5 stations were put in along the Virginia corridor. You know, they're excited when we build the next section to even potentially, you know, put some new ones in that new section. And so it's kind of a continuing, you know, partnership. But that's the kind of thing that you get. You know, there were people stretching on the benches and doing, you know, whatever they could, and now they have a place that they can do that. You know, here with these fitness equipment. All right, so phase four. Phase 4 was the section that we started to move north from the Rotary Centennial Junction. So from Orangeburg to Granger, and you know, this has a park adjacent. You can see in this picture here, right adjacent to the trail, and that was a great opportunity that we felt, you know, making sure that there's connections to that park. It has tennis courts, it has horseshoe pits, a playground, drinking fountains, restroom, all those amenities that you know, you might need along the way. And so, you know, a lot of people probably use this trail to get to here to play tennis. You know, they take a walk over to the tennis courts and play. They ride their bike over the tennis courts and play. You know, different things like that. So that's an exciting part about this phase 4. So I'll let Brian and Kelly give you some of their insights too.
Yeah, I'm in as far. Sorry, Brian.
No, go for it.
As far as the wildflowers in these photographs, these are definitely an enhancement to the trail to have the California poppies once a year in the trail, and all the varieties of wildflowers in some of the, I think it was in the first 2 to 3 phases that these areas were hydroseeded with the wildflowers. But it did bring some challenges to maintenance as far as weed control and having to control the weeds, and the dry season, having to mow the areas. The California poppies last, you know, a couple months, and then some of the other wildflowers and grasses will die out. And so first couple times the crews had to learn that they couldn't mow over the wildflowers because we started getting a bunch of calls from the citizens that shouldn't be mowing down these beautiful wildflowers. So we had to train our crews and our landscape contractor that certain times of the year they have to go around the wildflowers, and we just mow around those sections where there are groupings of them. But it definitely enhances the appearance of the trail, and these photographs are definitely proof of that. So I think in future phases we're making some changes to that, but it's definitely an enhancement to have these spotted areas with the wildflowers incorporated with the formal plantings.
Yeah, we definitely are. Like Kelly mentioned, we're looking at that wildflower mix, and I think we've pretty much dropped the California poppy out of that mix. That's the plant that the majority of the people were concerned about. Since it is our state flower, they didn't want us mowing it down when it was in flower, and so we kind of just dropped it out of the mix and left some of the other flowers so that it's less of a concern to people if we mow those when needed.
Yeah, and just to say a couple of things about this phase, it was important to blur the lines between Roosevelt Park and the trail itself so that they almost merged into one. The trail provides access while the park provides amenities for the trail. So it really was a win-win situation. So you can see how you really can't tell where the park ends and the trail begins. And again, these are one of the connections that was made to the park pathway system, so that the trail users can access the amenities. So, I mean, just understand that when you've got a corridor like this, there's a lot of eyes vying for this property. It's prime opportunities for infrastructure because you don't have to tear up streets in order to put it in and such. So we were working with the city and other agencies as they kind of evolved and put in some storm drain infrastructure trunk lines down the center of the trail. But we never really had access to any kind of storm drain infrastructure as part of the trail development. So we did have to figure out ways of, dealing with drainage and controlling flooding and also treating stormwater. So that's what you can see on the right-hand image. There's actually a buried perforated pipe that provides storage of rainwater and slowly percolates into the groundwater aquifers. So it ended up being a good situation. We didn't have access to traditional storm drainage infrastructure, but this worked out, and I think it's been working out fine as far as any potential flooding or drainage issues out there. Is that correct, you guys?
Yeah, I think so. We haven't seen any flooding, and we've had some pretty good rains in the last 10 years.
Okay. Well, Nathan, I'll let you start with this section. It's kind of one of the signature pieces.
Sure. This is phase 5. So this phase went from Granger Avenue up to Bowen Avenue, and it's about a 3/4 mile section that we added on, but we had to go over in the middle of the road there an MID canal, and then a separated road, which is one of our expressways, the Briggsmore Avenue Expressway. So, we had to go over a pretty long span, and so we had to design a way to get over that, a highly traveled intersection that we didn't want people to cross at grade. So we started to look at what could that look like, and so as you can see in the picture on the bottom right, the little concept design that was put together looks very similar to what you actually see in real life. So we were pretty excited about that. And, here we had the challenges that you always have when you go up in the air. People wanted to make sure that nobody looks down in their backyards. And so I'll let Brian talk a little bit about that and the community input process on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Nathan went over the challenges. 6 lanes of traffic. How do we get across it safe? You can see all the intersecting utility lines up in the air. How do we thread the needle between all of those and keep the required offset from those lines with our fencing and bridge? There's another MID irrigation canal right down the middles of this expressway. And then, of course, the residential adjacent and concerns for views in there. But it was a real opportunity to remove a massive barrier for off-street circulation. It was an opportunity to provide a signature piece for the trail itself, because it's so heavily, Briggsmore is such a heavily traveled corridor. It's a way of highlighting the trail to residents. And then it was an opportunity to continue the Art Deco branding that we started on earlier phases. Oops. So yeah, it's the design. It was nice to see that we were able to retain most of it. The one piece that we did eliminate was the low concrete barrier or railing that you see there. And that was a good elimination because it opened up views and reduced concerns about hiding spots. So it's a very open, transparent bridge that can be seen from the roadway below. As far as views into the neighborhood, what we ended up with is developing a terrace, a system of terraces for these long ramps that we had leading up to the bridge itself. And what those terraces allowed us to do was get trees closer to the trail in order to provide shade for the trail users. But then at the same time, that canopy then provides blockage of views into the adjacent residences. To show, and this I think is clearly kind of shows that. You can see the canopy on the left-hand side has been growing up over the years, and it's providing that visual blockage. We also made concessions as far as the lighting is concerned, and you can see we switched to bollard lighting instead of overhead lighting, again, for neighborhood concerns of glare for the lighting going into their backyards. And finally, just a few more shots. We provide some really unique vantage points that weren't there, kind of overlooking the expressway. So it's been a really it's been a great piece for the city and the trail. Lessons learned. So, it's always important to go back and kind of say, what could we do differently or better? Kelly, you want to speak to the lighting?
Yeah, so a couple of things in these pictures that I brought up about the wildflowers, and these are the two areas that one area has the poppies and one area was when we switched out of using poppies. But you can see they're both working out for us. And we've just gotten used to the style of maintenance difference in between the two differences. The other thing I wanted to point out was the light fixtures, and we did have some issues with the two light fixtures are identical except for the actual lens that is at the bottom. You'll see one that sticks down 8 inches to a foot, and then the other one is flush with the light fixture. So we were having some issues with vandals breaking the lenses on the lower, the ones on the left. So once we notify the design staff of these types of things, and they're able to make those changes in future designs, and we just adapt to it. And we started changing out these lenses when they break to the flush mount type, and it's just an easy conversion. And we're also converting a lot of these older ones to LED bulbs so that they're a lot more efficient. Turn it over to you. I think this is Nathan.
Yeah, phase 6. So phase 6 is the last section we've constructed. And so we're going to wrap this up here really quickly. But phase 6 went from Bowen Avenue to Woodrow. And so, you know, as we moved along, you can kind of see in these pictures how the trail has kind of evolved. If you remember in the pictures prior, some concrete elements coming across the trail, and you can kind of see those there on the left-hand side. But on the right-hand side, so the left-hand side is phase 5 picture, and then the right-hand side is phase 6. You can see we removed all those. They were at each light. As a value engineering item, we kind of moved those out so that we could save some money in construction, but also make it, you know, a little bit easier to maintain for our maintenance staff. So like I said, as we move further away from downtown, we kind of value engineered a few things out, but overall the trail doesn't look any different really. And so that's kind of one of the learning points that we've kind of made as we've gone along. Phase 7 here, this is our future phase. And so we're working on that design right now. We hope to get that under construction here shortly. And this is a crossing over another one of our major streets, which has quite a few lanes, and we don't want to cross at grade, so we're going to go above. But here we've we're looking at a design that's more of a metal prefabricated bridge as a value engineering item to kind of save some money there, but still kind of keeping that Art Deco column look. So kind of keeping some of that and tying it back to the old section, but, you know, kind of value engineering it to be a little bit less expensive and easier to maintain. So those are kind of what we're doing as we kind of move along. I don't know if you guys had anything else to add before we go to questions, but.
No, it's been a pleasure and a great opportunity to speak in front of you today, and looking forward to answering any questions about the process.
Yeah, we hope that everybody enjoys the presentation. You know, this has been a great opportunity to share our project. We will have an opportunity for some questions here shortly, so, you know, stay on and we'll get those. You can always, you know, do some questions in the chat box also, and we can answer those questions for you. We do have a little video that we can show of the trail, and so we'll kind of show that now.
Thank you, everyone.